The universe is a dangerous place. We must be prepared to embrace the mutations that let us survive. We must be prepared to accept the data and results of trials no matter what our bias or predisposition. It is the only way to survive the malevolent universe, so saith I. The Book of High Mutations of Thought, Body, and Soul. You may name the star, High Mutator Bernac stated, still standing so that he was in the center of the view screen so that he could take it all in. It looks odd. Steve me, so that she may live on beyond her years, Dunnad said without even thinking. An odd choice. I had assumed her infidelity would have mutated your feelings into normally unwanted emotions, Bernac stated. The mutation was unwanted, but turned out to be far different than I assumed, Dunnad admitted. I view it in a lesson against complacency and an unwillingness to face the facts set before me. Why did you not face those facts? Bernac asked, still staring at the screen. An unwillingness to admit to fact that would harm my emotional state and cause our relationship to mutate in painful ways, attempting to ignore the mutation that had already occurred, Dunnad replied. He looked at his terminal and the data. Star possesses a high amount of oxygen and carbon. He bent forward. Iron core. No hydrogen, no helium. He leaned back, his eyes opening wide. A star type that has been theorized but never discovered. What is that? Bernac asked. A resurrection star. When two dead stars collide after becoming white dwarfs or neutron stars, when nothing is left. Solar wind is extremely high, but made up of oxygen, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, carbon, and moving at roughly 20,000 kilometers per second. Magnetic field is 8 times the strength of standard stars, Dunnad said. He gave out a barking laugh dripping with self-mocking. The star indeed should be named for her. Bernac nodded slowly. But you said it defies classification. What makes this a defiant star? By estimations, the collision happened roughly 22,000 years ago, Dunnad said. He frowned. This star should be without orbital bodies, much less an Oort cloud, Kuiper belt, or comets and an asteroid belt. They both should have exploded into a nova or supernova, which would mean no orbital bodies or debris. The star should be inside of a nebula. Bernac nodded slowly. He looked at the navigator. Move us into Grade 1 stealth. Keep planets between us and the star. Use mass offsetting to prevent a grav shadow. The navigator nodded. Aye, sir. You seem overcautious, Dunnad said. I dislike a mutation that should not have occurred and lacks the correct stimulus to cause such a mutation. Mutation without evidence of the mutagenic or the trials is unnatural. There is a mutagenic out there, we just must discover it, Bernac said. You fear the mutagenic property to be the builders, Dunnad guessed. Indeed, Bernac said. You are authorized to use stealth probes if you move them to a different entry vector. Thank you, High Mutator, Dunnad said. He prepped his probes. He'd use the torpedo chassis to take them back out under stealth, then micro-jump to the side. Not exactly opposite, but at roughly as 22-degree angle on the stellar rotation plane and 33% on the north-south. That would make it so that any scanner looking backwards would be looking at a different sector than the ship was in. He wasn't some sucker, not anymore. He then ran spectrographic analysis, going over the data carefully. The white star was putting out the approximate energy of a mid-grade yellow with green highlight star. It produced 3.762 x 1026 joules per second in energy output. It had a gravitation signature of 1.32 x 1030 kilo, which was a little high for its apparent size, but not its energy output. He sank himself into his work, watching for any data mutations. Evidence of gravity ripples in the subspace foam that did not match the star's movements or internal gravity tremors. Evidence of a large mass moving at high speed at an oblique angle to the stellar rotational plane left in redshift, roughly the distance of 23.4 thousand years prior. evidence of a massive gravitational surge, evidence of a massive radiation surge mixed heavily with chronotrons. He stopped and looked at the data repeatedly. His people had learned long ago that messing with time was a losing proposition. Trials had been held where the math was investigated. It was quickly discovered that messing with time produced the worst possible outcome for the beings attempting to alter or otherwise manipulate time beyond high-speed time dilation, synchronizing to prevent extended amounts of time to pass while one was moving faster than light or approaching light speed. Whole trials vanished or had other strange things happen to them. His people were an intelligent species and realized quickly that the outcomes of the trials were mere warnings and that far worse awaited if his species attempted to heavily dabble in the time stream. But this radiation burst, which appeared to be in the white visible light frequency, was heavily laden with chronotrons and something else. He examined it closer as the time went by and his probes moved into position. Twice he went to bed and slept, before almost running back to his terminal. Once he stopped to eat and saw the assault descent troopers gathered up to eat. He noted they were wearing unpowered armor and were gathered up in military units. For a moment, Dunad wondered how mutated his life would be if he had attempted a military trial for his life instead of data analysis and manipulation. He decided they were scary-looking enough that he probably wouldn't have been accepted just based on how harmless he looked. A quick request to the High Mutator got him a lab to perform trials in, and he set to it eagerly as the ship approached the furthest out orbital body, keeping it between the ship and the stellar mass. He installed the computers and software quickly, as well as the holotanks. The star defied normal conventions. It was almost 2.5 days when he contacted the High Mutator. "I have conclusions. I am about to run the final trial simulations to establish the likelihood of each theorized mutation that led to the star's current reality," he stated. The High Mutator nodded and cut the link. Dunad was nervous but excited as the High Mutator, his mentor, entered the room. He stayed silent as High Mutator Bernak examined his computers, his holotanks, then looked over his software choices. 2 of the computer networks were for the High Mutator to examine his data analysis mutations. Bernak nodded. "Excellent work. Proceed with your trials." Dunad started the programs, all of them showing how the current stellar system could have come about. "The first thing is I had to ensure we were seeing what we were seeing," Dunad said. "A trial has no use if the proper mutations and realities are not observed." Bernak nodded. "I have looked over some of your data. The stellar mass is nothing like anything in the databases." "Not exactly true," Dunad said. He opened up a star field in the holotank. "I have found 22 others with this spectrometer signature, all of them at various stages of life, with 8 exceptions." Bernak lifted his chin, signifying interest. "Proceed. All 8 are, from my trials that I can perform at this distance, the same age," Dunad said. "Which is?" Bernak asked. "The same as this star, 23,000 years," Dunad said. "The eruption of heaven," Bernak stated. He crossed his thumbs across his palm. "The great mutator's proof he lived, delivered unto us after his avatar visited us to stave off the extinction. Through his generosity and benevolence, we were saved from the builder's wrath." Dunad nodded. "Proof beyond proof, our people were not alone," Bernak stated. "We had reached out beyond our home and found only cold, lifeless planets orbiting growling stars that muttered their hatred of us in their dreams." Dunad nodded again at the quote from the Book of Mutations, Trials, and Proofs. "Let us start the trials to see if the trials prove my theorem," Dunad said. The holotanks beeped, flashed red, then silver, then started displaying the data. Bernak moved from tank to tank, watching the data move, watching the simulations. One by one they flashed and errored out. One stayed but had massive errors streaming down. Bernak leaned forward and looked at one. The data mutations added were outside of the realm of known possibility. but it was the only that worked. "We are in the presence of one of the works of the builders," Bernac said, standing up straight and looking at Dunod. As they were set to work by the great mutator, they performed their commanded duty without hesitation and saved our people, Dunod said. "We know they were the avatars and servants of the great mutator, and here we have proof that they interceded to save us." "With the eruption of heaven," Bernac said, "you have found more proof that it not only happened but how it was done." "To an extent," Dunod answered. "The builders took another star and put it together with this one, consuming a significant amount of its mass in creating the eruption of heaven. Stellar mass lifting, planetary swarms, habitation tubes, habitation rings, now this," Bernac said. He tapped the top of one computer. "We will proceed cautiously. We walk in the footsteps of the servants of the great mutator." 00000. The view screen showed the mechanism. It looked like a dandelion seed. The tip of the long section slightly bulged, a web of interconnected mechanisms at the top. The webbing pointed deeper into the stellar mass. The bulged tip pointed outward. "What is it?" the High Mutator asked. "Unknown. It is deep within the stellar mass. I can only see its silhouette, not the actual structure itself," Dunod stated. "The web is wider than our homeworld." The High Mutator nodded. "It does not matter what the colony trials result in. This system cannot be colonized. It is too dangerous," the High Mutator said. He sighed. "Although there is, undoubtedly, wonders beyond our imagination hidden within this system, the wonders we have already observed warn us that to delve deeper might release a doom upon us all." The bridge crew all nodded. "Strike a course for the refueling station," Bernac ordered. "As you command, sir," the navigator said. To be honest, he was glad that he was no longer being urged to tread where angels had once labored to save life as his people knew it. 0000000. Dunod had learned much, watching the High Mutator ordering the bioship to retract into its shell and then move to superluminal space in order to move to another system. It was faster than the spaceship, able to navigate higher into shade space without worry about picking up shades from either shade space or ghost space. It would have gathered more mass and stellar energy to convert into fuel by the time the ship got there. Dunod had to admit, so far working for the High Mutator had showed him a lot. Her loss still hurt him some days. He had promised her everything, and she had taken everything. He vowed to put his life back together even further. She was light years behind him physically, and it was time to put her behind him emotionally. He left his stateroom and moved to his trials laboratory. He booted up the computers one by one, made sure the previous experiment's data was archived, then wiped all the parameters. The next was another system being considered for colonization. He knew that many would consider the evidence he had gathered to contradict the existence of the great mutator, but was not the ability to do magic, which was what such unknowable technology actually was, one of the prerequisites for divinity? Was not the miracle of the eruption of heaven proof? He shook his head, running one finger along the top of a monitor. Those questions were for those who studied and conducted trials on the divine. He sat down in the chair. He brought up the data of all non-lambdaral artifacts, ruins, and evidence found in the several thousands of years that his people had been beyond their own stellar system. He did not bother writing a trial or a mutation. He began to look over the data the old-fashioned way, began to examine each instance, each piece of evidence, each artifact, relic, or wreckage, in the only way that he could be sure he understood all of it.